I think I can confidently speak on behalf of people in our age bracket. And I've taken a little interest in the demographics of 50-year-olds through to 64-year-olds. Perhaps some of you here are in that bracket as well. One or two a little bit older maybe, a couple younger. Well, you may be very aware that the government is encouraging us to become economically active, those of us who are not economically active at the moment, to return to work to do our bit for the British economy. And the official government stats from September 2022 say that 1.4 million 50 to 64-year-olds are not in work due to being sick, injured or disabled. Heard even higher figures more recently. And this makes up the largest group amongst this age bracket, 50 to 64-year-olds, of those who are not in work, followed by the 33.4% who are retired, or 1.2 million. The number of 50 to 64-year-olds in employment, being employed, is quoted as down to 70.7% from 72.5% in 2019. But it's still far higher than the figure from 1995, which is 57.2%. So over that period, over those years, that's what, 22 years, this age group have become increasingly employed. Now, like any set of figures, these obviously don't tell the full story. They don't show the huge amount of unpaid work that is done by this age group. Work in homes, looking after grandchildren, supporting community projects, volunteering, doing all kinds of things that this group do. And it doesn't also ask that crucial question. That 70% who are working, who are employed, why are the 70% who are employed, who are working, why are they working? Why work? In the Gospel, Jesus encounters a woman who is working. She is drawing water from a well. We're told it's around about the 6th hour of the day. This means that it's around about midday, the burning heat of the day. This woman has come out to the well to draw water. Hard work in the burning heat, probably carrying that water a distance to her home. We could ask that woman, well, why are you coming? This is what Jesus wants to know. Why are you coming? What are you seeking? Why are you here to draw the water? And of course, the answer is quite obvious on one level. The woman is thirsty. The woman's household needs that water. So that's why she comes in the heat of the day to draw the water. And of course, if you ask many of us, well, why are you working? We have very clear answers. Got to pay the mortgage, put food on the table, the real necessities of life. These even apply to Dominicans. We don't have mortgages in this province, but we do have to put food on the table. A great deal of what I do as provincial bursar is really work which is saving the province money. We'd have to pay somebody to do that work, which we don't necessarily have. So there are economic necessities to our work. Great deal of the income of the province is earned by the brothers working, hopefully in priestly ministries where they're doing chaplaincy, something along those lines, but we have to bring the money in. So there's economic necessities. There are also wider goods of work. Of course, one of the things we discovered with home working and remote working is that people lose their connections. Probably quite nice at the beginning, you don't have the commute, but a lot of people then end up being quite isolated. So work is often a place where you come in, you have a chat to somebody, you work with people, you're socially connected with people. Work contributes to the good of society. You see some work more obviously than others. If you're a nurse, a doctor, it's very clear how you're contributing. You do what I do, talking to banks all day long and worrying about things like health and safety and so on. probably a bit less direct, as it were, to understand how you're contributing. But all work in some way should contribute to the good of society. And all these are good answers. All these are good reasons why people work. You know, to go and say, well, why aren't people working? Perhaps the question is more, why should people, or why are people working? Well, that 70%, say up from 57% in 1995. But what Jesus wants to go deeper into this. So the woman's giving him, well, they're having this conversation about, well, what's happening here? Why are you drawing the water? She's saying, look, you know, you've not anything even to draw the water with. How are you going to get down to that deep well to draw the water up? But of course, he wants to draw something deeper out of her. He wants to draw a deep need out of her, something that goes beyond the physical thirst that she has. And that's why then we have this dialogue, this conversation developing, in which Jesus reveals who he is. He reveals himself as the Savior of the world, as the Messiah to this woman. And he tells her that through him, people will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. And that this is his work. This is his purpose and work, to bring all people to worship the Father in spirit and truth. And so all of our work, no matter what we do, ultimately it should be directed to this. Of course, some people more directly. But most of us, even Dominicans, a lot of what we do is not that directly, but things which enable the worship in spirit and truth to take place. And I think once we have that focus, all else falls into place in our lives. Of course, the essential need to put bread on the table, to pay the mortgage, to support children, to contribute to society, to fulfill our own needs for connection with people. All that is very good. But ultimately, all has to be directed towards this worship of God in spirit and truth. A worship that begins here and now, as we come together to worship in the Holy Eucharist, to join in the sacrificial worship of Christ. But something that we look forward to the completion of, that we look forward in hope, when we will be continually praising the Father in spirit and truth with the saints in heaven. And I think having that focus, knowing what we're doing, and of course you can't have that focus consciously every moment of your life, but recalling this is again why we come here on Sundays, to recall why are we doing what we do. When we're rushing around in this manic world of work, anybody involved in the world of work realize how manic and crazy it is these days. We have to have that focus. And I think it's increasingly difficult for our society to keep that focus and to really ask, well, what are we doing this for? And so the work becomes increasingly crazed and manic. If only we were to bring in more procedures, if only we were to tighten things up further, we'd solve the problems. Well, of course, problems can be solved, but new problems arise, and eventually we run out of time and energy. We run out of the will to tackle these things, unless we keep our focus on what's truly important. So we have wonderful lessons to learn from this gospel. It's one of those passages you could return to time and time and time again, and you draw something, or Christ draws something more out of you as you contemplate this incredible encounter of Christ with this woman. But a little thing that I drew out is just this focus of all we do, of our work, of our daily activities, on this spiritual good, this worship, this spiritual water, which each one of us deeply desires.